In a rapidly expanding omniverse of sci-fi content, two Terrans try to make sense of it all. From the latest to the greatest to the most thought-provoking science fiction content on the screen, we bring you Crowded Space Podcast.
Welcome to Crowded Space Podcast. This is Total Frequency, episode 37. Fallout, the series, season 1. I'm your host, Eric.
And I'm your other host, Jared.
And that's on Amazon Prime.
2024. Yeah, I was just about to say that. This is, eight episode series, so we're going to be covering it in its entirety. Let everyone know there will be spoilers.
Lots of spoilage.
We're kind of assuming you've probably seen... I don't think we're going to spoil the absolute ending, but
No, I don't want to
essentially,
do that,
yeah. But we're going to assume you've seen the majority of it because
it's not the destination.
You should, so... Yeah, it's a journey.
But anyway,
so
a lot of people I talked to, they've blown through all 8 episodes, so I think they were pretty happy with it.
It's been mixed. I know a lot of people are like, "Oh, I've been waiting to watch it with my significant other, and they haven't had the time, so I haven't watched it all," or this or that, which I get. But maybe before I do the recap, let's get in, because this will paint a little bit of the world anyways. We're talking about our experience with the video game.
Yes.
Because this goes back, decades, starting with a kind of groundbreaking RPG with the original Fallout. However, personally, I didn't get interested into the Fallout series until Fallout 3, which is, I think, where a lot of people get interested.
Vegas one?
Because...
No.
New Vegas was an expansion on 3. Yeah.
Okay.
But the big difference between 1 and 2 were very similar, same game engine and whatever.
Right.
But where it's kind of top down, whereas in 3 is where it got the first person and the VAT system, and
a lot of people loved it.
Fallout as we know it today in terms of a video game. And how about that's how I've got into the Fallout universe. How about you?
For me, it was 4. So I never played 3 at all. Which, from what I heard, a lot of people really loved New Vegas. So,
in terms of plot,
yeah.
I'm not sure that the graphics really hold up today. And from the reviews, the more modern reviews that I've read that have come out thanks to the Fallout series,
right,
saying, "Oh, hey, if you're new to the series but you want to play one of the video games, we recommend Fallout 4 because it's on most platforms and it's got the most
it's really updated
graphics
too.
and all of that."
I enjoyed it. I enjoyed it all immensely. So
yeah, I came in at 3, played that all the way through, played maybe a third in New Vegas, and at the time it just felt like more 3. It wasn't drastically enough different, even though the plot was good. I just wasn't into it. And then 4 came out, and they gave that a good stab until I kind of had to choose between the different factions, and I'm like, I don't know. Also, it was just I had a kind of killer build, and I was just rocking it, and it kind of got boring because it was too easy. I should have upped the difficulty or just stopped doing laser guns and headshots, because like the crit, I was just one shot and critting.
Those
go hand.
Go hand in hand, right?
Yeah, but for me, I've always been a fan of sci-fi, but in particular post-apocalyptic. It's just interesting to think of how is humanity going to scrape by, and how long can we rest on our laurels in terms of what we've got hoarded and leftover gas, and what sort of new inventions are going to come out of the apocalypse, and what sort of new creatures are going to come out of that. So Fallout as a series has always done a great job of kind of scratching that itch for me.
Right.
And then also kind of delving into this moral gray zone of, hey, when the government's gone and it comes down to survival, what's humanity really going to look like? There's, that's permeated throughout the Fallout franchise. And in almost every mission, there's some sort of moral quandary that you're going to have to pick a side on, and that is reflected in the series. So without talking around it anymore, I guess let me get down to it and say that essentially Fallout is what would happen if World War III happened, and the vast majority of the surface has now been wiped clean because of nuclear warfare and the fallout afterwards. So, assuming that the vast majority of Earth is now irradiated and inhospitable for life.
Yep.
And now the kind of twist on that is now there is this huge corporation that was kind of dominating the capitalistic American landscape at the dawn of this.
Right? It was like the 40s or in the 40s or 50s, around there? More than that. 60s.
Well, so now you want to get into the timeline of the Fallout series. Okay,
but I mean,
we can do.
I didn't mean to derail you or anything. I just wanted to paint the picture of the history-wise, where kind of like the nuclear family type, where they had fallout shelters and all that stuff. That's the name.
Yeah, so essentially the Fallout timeline splits from our own somewhat in 1945.
Okay.
And the best that I can tell, the series of events when we have the backflashes of the ghouls, see, now we're all over the place. Is like 2077.
Okay.
Right? And so one of the major first differences in the Fallout timeline compared to ours is after World War II, and there's no Vietnam War, right? So that's kind of one of the reasons why Fallout is stuck in this 50s aesthetic.
Yeah.
Is that presumably there's been no 60s counterculture hippie revolution to shake people out of this nuclear age, nuclear family way of thinking, and this kind of futuristic and Art Deco stylizing that we see in like in the vault kitchens,
right. That makes sense.
Chrome and big smooth corners, and that sort of stuff.
Yes, perfect.
And to get back onto the plot of Fallout, we've got this large corporation, the Vault Tech, who has made vaults sprinkled throughout of America. That, in theory, coupled with their technology and fusion power, again, that people can survive underground for hundreds of years.
Yes,
and so that's where the series is essentially starting. Is over 200 years after essentially the Great War, where the bombs fell and most of humanity survived underground with scrids up above there. And so, wow, yeah, it's a big world, so it's hard to put it in a nutshell.
No, you did a good job, because
again, this series is starting from the kind of perspective of a single vault dweller, Lucy, as she's trying to find her place in the world, and her vault essentially is invaded by raiders, and her world is shook as her dad is kidnapped by these so-called raiders for reasons that are not clear why they have him. And so she goes to set out looking for her dad. And I think one of the beautiful things about Fallout is it's one of these shows where they're weaving together, 3 or 4 different stories. And so the 2 other kind of protagonists, quote unquote protagonists, are Maximus, so a member of Brothers of the Steel, which is this kind of militaristic outfit that is trying to hold together law and order and collect the remnants of technology left of humanity on the so-called wastelands up above. And Maximus is essentially a squire to a so-called knight who's walking around in this power armor. And then finally we have the ghoul, sort of Fallout's version of a zombie, but we maybe can get into that later. Essentially, the ghoul is your badass, just Wild West bounty hunter that is kind of immortal as long as he gets his meds. And if he doesn't get his meds, then he goes feral and will probably lose his mind and attack everyone.
Yep.
And so we're following these three characters as they're trying to essentially make their way in the Wastelands, with one little twist, which is that the ghoul is from before the war. Like I said, it's over 200 years old, and we get flashbacks of his previous life as the story progresses, and so we get an idea of how the war came to be and how Voltec came to have all of this power over humanity. At any rate, so there's my 10-minute long intro. Are we ready for high notes? And any big points, I guess, plot points I missed that you want to kind of fill in?
Maybe you want to talk about the fact that there's the doctor that was Ziggy Wilzig. You remember the one with the go after his head? He brings it all together.
Yeah, he's essentially the MacGuffin of the least Lucy story, but no, really the MacGuffin of everyone's story. That's what everyone is after is this doctor, and really they don't care about the doctor; they care about
the knowledge he has.
No, not even the knowledge. The fusion reactor he has in his neck.
That's right. He had that in his head. Why did I think it was knowledge? That's what I thought in the beginning it was, but then towards that
unlimited power, the ability to restart civilization, essentially. Yeah. Okay. Lies in his neck.
So I guess we're ready for the high notes now.
Boom. There it is.
Want me to go first?
Yes, please. I've been doing all the talking.
So with you having that amazing intro, and that's why I wanted to talk back a little bit about the timeline, because some people haven't played Fallout. So now they understand.
I think even if you do play Fall, I specifically had to look up the timeline for this.
Dude, it was awesome. Good job. Now it made me like, oh yeah, that makes sense. But the backstories is what I thought they really did a good job on. Except for one, but we'll get to that later once we get into the low notes. But I love the backstories for all the characters. They did a good job. They were all great actors, and they were pretty well-rounded.
Yeah, no complaints about the cast whatsoever.
Yeah.
Backstory and Maximus I thought was a little light, to be honest. It's like, I'm a war survivor. Like nothing, we don't know his family. And then I was with the Brotherhood. It's like, that's a long time.
Him coming out of the refrigerator as a kid or whatever.
Yeah. Kind of
they had the same scene
little nod from Indiana Jones. It's like, hey, I guess that does work. You can now. It's been in movies twice. It must be real. So that's and survived.
What about yours?
So he was saved by a knight in the Brotherhood. And so for me, one of the high notes was actually how they adapted the power suits from the video game into live action. I felt whenever there was someone in a power suit in the show, they were such a presence, right? They were such a menace. Like you could feel that you were almost a god among monkeys when you're wearing a power suit in the Wastelands. And they had some really good scenes where they showed like the ability of the power suit just to wreak devastation, right? He inadvertently knocks over a whole house at one point, or crushes the guy's head and throws a rock over the horizon. So really flawless introduction of the power suit and into the whole world that they were building. And so I'm just gonna do a run on high here. And again, it's something that we talk about a lot is world building. Now, this is a world that's already been built from the video games, right? To the point where almost they can all they can do is wrong, because there's so many details already out there for the fanboys to pick on,
right?
But there's so many scenes that just paint this perfectly terrible post-apocalyptic scene with the ruins and the desert and
like the
tumbleweed
when they were at the lake
and all that. Yeah,
with the creature. What I put for that, because I had the same, I put the setting perfect.
Yep,
that was mine. So
what else you got?
I have the music. I love the music, in there with like the old school 50s, like where they had like jingles and
for lack of a better term, some jitterbug music or the old timey
stuff. I loved it.
Yeah, and also just using the old Fallout theme music, whether they slowed it down and made it even more somber somehow to hit home some of these points. And it is already a fairly compelling soundtrack, but I think they really used it to great dramatic effect without overdoing it as well. So they walked the line there. Nice.
Yep.
I did like some of the little, for lack of a better term, Easter eggs. You know, when her brother is hacking into the terminal.
He's trying to log
into the terminal, and he has to do the little find the word. There's actually a really common. It's almost the same puzzle that's in Fallout.
Words with Friends or no?
No, Wordle or something like that. I think.
Yeah,
it's almost the same thing in Fallout. So it was great seeing that on the screen. You know, the very end they show, big spoiler here. You know, New Vegas on the horizon, so you get an idea of what's to come. There's the Deathclaw skull, he's almost stepping on at the end.
Right.
Those are like huge. That's one of the big baddies for me. I know when I was first able to kill one in game, I'm like, yeah, I'm the man. I took down the Deathclaw. So yeah, they did a great job of giving you the feel of the game without making it feel cheap and stupid,
Right.
So
yeah, which most video game movies have a hard time not falling into that trap. So they did a good job keeping it fresh.
Yeah, and having that immersion where you're feeling that things are really desolate, but true to the Fallout universe, you have these odd encounters with just quirky weirdos here and there because it's the end of the world. What you got left over, it's a mixed bag. You get people eating each other and people wanting to jack you for your Pip-Boy, and you get scavengers picking over your armor if you leave it alone for 2 seconds.
They definitely painted the world. And when they went to, what was the city, the little town she went to?
Oh man, do your homework. I don't know. I don't know. It's tough because there's so many towns that are very similar to the ones in the game that it's easy to get them to mixed up. What I liked about the town when she went into the town for the first time, ask about her dad. This is early on in the series. She's still very naive. She hasn't learned any. She hasn't had any experiences. And again, to just a point about the immersion, we see all of the Wastelanders giving her the eyeball or looking over their shoulder like, who is this clean looking person in the vault suit with a vault tech and a dart gun. So any other scenes that really stood out to you?
When Lucy and the ghoul got into it, and he cut off her trigger finger and she bit off his trigger finger, and they kind of like brought it into the story. They both got him back. Remember when she got it from the robot and he just found one and just like sewed it on for his?
No, he cut hers off and kept it for later and put hers on.
I put hers on as I thought he had found one. Oh, that's even more gruesome.
Yeah, you had the order, right? She bit his finger off and then he cut hers off in retaliation, and then he sewed hers on later.
Okay.
And then then though.
But anyway, that right there was a good little. I like that they kept it consistent. So
yeah, and I want to say there's a lot of little things like that where they keep track of these relationships.
All of a sudden she's got her finger back.
Yeah. Or early on when Maximus gets the power armor and he sees one dude beating up another and saves the guy, and he's like, "Thank you, kind knight," and blah blah blah. That's the same guy that 5 episodes later, the chicken fucker, the same chicken fucker that then essentially
made. Was it Thaddeus? Thaddeus, I think his name was.
Yeah, the
squire.
Maximus' pseudo squire gave him the healing, which I do want to talk about that scene.
Okay.
But not as part of one of the high notes.
Okay. I'm done with them.
All right. Well, I guess I'll rapid fire mine off.
All right.
This is probably worth a drop. Okie dokie. Again, that they use that like 3 or 4 times. And, for me, one of the...
She takes the saw out.
Okie dokie.
Yeah, that's great. I really liked. I should have probably weaved this in with the power suit, but I really liked the fight with the Yao Guai. So essentially the mutated bear,
right?
So it's a great example of the knight just being a total dink to Maximus, and like sending him into the cave, and it was just it was just this really slow like slugfest,
Yep.
And then he's running away, like, and then just Maximus kind of standing on the sidelines watching it all go down. It was really surreal.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Would you have done the same thing? Just let the guy who's treating you like shit die.
Yeah. Maybe not if I was so stupid about pyro armor. Like, he could have easily killed himself 2 or 3 times in the power armor just because he didn't know what he was doing. But
Rule number 1. Read the manual.
But yeah, probably would have. And then also for me, another kind of high moment was when they were in, was it Vault 4?
Yes. With the mutants?
Yeah. And they're trying to woo Maximus for whatever reason, entice him to stay or just show him how good
stuff.
Yeah, so he's there with a gift basket, his thing of caviar, his bathrobe and slippers.
I got slippers.
TV station, all that's on it is a waterfall, but it's just like the coolest thing he's ever seen. Popcorn for the first time.
Right.
So just, this great juxtaposition of essentially living, hand to mouth, getting this. Maybe not literally, getting the shit kicked out of you almost every other day. And all that, to being pampered. So
eating popcorn.
And then he still did the right thing and went after Lucy when he saw her in trouble. So So it was a great little scene kind of nearer to the end of the series.
Yeah, that was a good scene.
But then I would say, without further ado, let's get into let's get low.
Mine was the ghoul's backstory. I thought out of the 3 protagonists, he was the weakest one for how he became a ghoul anyway. Not his setting up the vault tech stuff. Because
they got to leave something for season 2.
Yeah, I guess.
I
hope
what you
they touch
want.
into it.
And again, they're kind of going. I was thinking about it just this morning. I was like, I think they're going for like the Boba Fett. He's the mysterious bounty hunter.
I like
the more we know about him, maybe the less cool he is, right?
That's true. That makes sense.
He's more sympathetic, and he's a nice guy, and he was charismatic and take care of dogs and I also was like, why is he in that hole?
Exactly.
Why would someone not just kill him?
He's with a little, he had this little medicine too. So obviously they wanted to keep him around.
Too dangerous to let him free, too useful to kill him.
Yeah. So
there's your answer. Yeah.
That was my low note.
Well, so me, I guess I'm going more for emotional low notes.
Oh, yeah.
Things that are so the bombs falling and seeing it through kind of Cooper's viewpoint.
His daughter there.
But I mean, that was just like that was the stuff that nightmares are made of.
Yeah.
Right. It was just so realistic. Like you felt you were there. It's like, yep, that's the end of the world. That's what the end of the world looks like, just like that.
Yeah.
Thanks for capturing it picture perfectly, guys.
Well,
they had a job to do, and they nailed it.
They did a good job.
Yeah. What about you?
For me, it was Lucy always looked pretty no matter what the situation she was in. She always had the perfect makeup. Her hair was always. She had her hair was sat perfectly. I mean, there were some scenes that she was in combat. She was fighting for her life and all that. But then after that. We go to the next scene and she's all dolled up. Okay.
Yeah, Vault 4. When she got into Vault 4, it went from scouring the wastelands to model fresh.
Yeah.
Essentially. But at least that did lead us to the scene, which is one of my low notes, is when he's talking about she's like, so do you want to have intercourse then while we wait? And he's like,
it gets all big and hard like a big pimple, and then it pops. They say it could happen to anybody, but it's gross.
That's actually completely normal. happens all the time. Every time, ideally.
You can say that's again a high note because it's kind of a funny scene, but I like it as a low note because it really goes to show how quickly ignorance can spread. Within 200 years, that we can quickly just slip back into medieval ages and not know. Especially something that I feel like the Brotherhood, they probably want their soldiers celibate and away from females. Like, we're not even going to explain how your body works. You're just going to have to.
But they had
fumble
females
through
with the Brotherhood. His friend was a female. Anyway.
Yeah.
They had, anyway,
well, thanks for shitting on my point, but the idea being that
I wasn't shitting on your point. Hey, do your homework.
I didn't see a single female there, but if you say so.
Anyway, mine will be all right. So mine will be the weapons. I really thought that, like in Fallout, there were more like funny making your own weapons types, like homemade jobbies, and then I didn't feel like with them, like with the Squire and the Brotherhood, you had that big friggin' like golf bag. You were carrying that around. I wish it would have been like, hey, give me my big gun or whatever, like, give me my 9-iron or whatever, or something like that. Where more involvement with like more weapons out there to like homemade style, like in.
Yeah, we only saw like two things out of the bag, really.
Yeah, you had
we saw a med kit, the radiation, like the Geiger counter, and then there was the badass gun he pulled big gun on
that he put together,
amphibian thing. But yeah, exactly. Yeah, I see what you're saying. I did think it was kind of cool. We got the junk cannon that killed the dude with like the baby arm, right? The little doll arm.
Yeah, that's right.
Sticking out of the guy's chest. Yeah. So they did capture some of that, but that is something that Fallout is known for, is the wide variety of guns and the guns that you can make.
Yeah.
And not a lot of laser pistols,
right,
which is something that, as soon as I find a ray gun, I hold on to it for dear life in the wasteland.
Yeah, because I just thought they were like their caddy, when they were a Squire and they have that big bag and they're like trekking along. Oh man, there's a lot of crap in here. But they only pulled like a couple of weapons. It would have been cool, like, hey, when he was fighting the bear, like, hey, give me my sword. And they're like, you were not nice to me, man. Yeah, I'm gonna look the other way.
No, it was almost comedic how big those bags were that the poor Squires had, because it's like it's size for the power armor, right? Like the suit should be dragging that bag, but they just stick the Squire with it because
it's like the Monty Python with the coconuts, right?
A little bit. It's almost that ridiculous in size. So another low note for me, speaking of Squires, is essentially when Maximus tries to come out to his Squire that he's not really Titus, he let Titus die, and the Thaddeus or whatever takes off on him, and he crushes his leg, and then there's a scene where he's taking off his boot, and it was like, is anyone who's done any amount of hiking and sprained ankles, you don't take off your boot, not till your final doesn't do, like, leave the boot on. Oh, he's taking off the boot, and it was so gnarly, like I had to look away, like toes dangling and just mashed. And that's not even the goriest thing. I mean, again, Fallout, especially starting at 3, is known for being gory. You got, you get a crit and there's gibs and chunks everywhere and blood. And, they've got the scenes here where limbs just get liquefied and people go scattering. But man, his foot. And then when he gets it healed later on, I was like, both. And my wife loves like horror movies. Both of us were like, I don't want to. We're looking away. So I don't want to do this. I don't want to do this. So it was well done, but still little low.
Would you say that's a emotional low note as well?
Yeah.
If you have any more, go for it, but I'm pretty much done with that.
Well, anytime you got a dog almost dying, I think that's a noteworthy low note. And it was like kind of twice. First, the dog was stabbed almost to death, and then I'm like, I knew the dog wasn't going to die, because I'm like, that is suicide. There are so many people that if you kill the dog in episode 2, they're done. They're not watching the show no more.
True.
but not.
That's right.
So I'm like something's gonna give, whether he comes back as a zombie dog or they heal him, or because I figured that the dog was from the Enclave, which is something we haven't gotten into at all, which is a big player in the Wastelands, but hasn't really, they just slowly, little bit got weaved in. But I figured it was like, oh, it's a super dog, it's gonna have a healing factor, or be an android or something. But it got healed and all is good. But then turned around a couple episodes later and the replacement Squire is freaking...
You put the dog?
Which I'm like, there's no dog in the world that would allow you to do that. But fine. Asshole.
So especially when the dog didn't even know who the hell that guy was.
Yeah.
Like, who the hell are you?
And then my final low note, and I'm sure there's going to be a video compilation of this sooner or later, but poor Maximus getting his bell rung. Like every episode, he is like, bang, knocked out or knocked in the head within an inch of his life. Like 6 times easy. It happens, at least. I mean, the first scene we see him, he's getting...
That's right.
He's
That's
getting
right.
gang beat.
Yeah.
So...
That's right. He did get his ass beat a few times, more than a few times. So,
well, not just his ass beat, but his bell rung, like hit in the head, knocked out, or dizzy, or like several times. But poor guy. Yeah. Well, if you're cool with the high and the low, we can get into some static.
Static it up. So for me. Lucy's mother alive, the weird zombie thing that she had going on when the leader of the...
As soon as I saw it too, I'm like, that's her mom. Like it was super obvious.
This is... maybe it's just the wasteland doing strange things to people, but it was like... why? Why?
I guess I've seen enough of like The Stand, not The Stand, of Walking Dead.
Walking Dead. That's what I thought.
Like,
that's immediately where my brain,
their loved ones alive in zombie form or ghoul form or whatever. Yeah. So it's like a trope that's with zombies that's almost so old they didn't even bother explaining it in Fallout that it was the Raider leader's lover.
Yeah, exactly.
Right,
like,
and that's why she kept her. Like they didn't bother explaining it. Like, hey, look, that's why her mom's there.
She's got a little necklace. There you go.
Lesbian zombie. If you guys figure it out, fuck. We're tired. We're tired of just
all inclusive.
We're tired of just spelling everything out for you tards. So here you go. Figure out the zombie.
So that was my static.
Yeah, so I guess I'll dovetail that into my static. So I really did like the sci-fi kind of moral quandaries and message that they had in Fallout, but they really just like, served it on a silver platter. Because one of the themes here in Fallout is that going in this survival mode, doing what you have to do, living outside of this bubble, this utopia, it will change you.
Yep.
And that you're not going to be, essentially they say something to the fact of,
the question is, will you still want the same things when you have become a different animal altogether?
Right. Yes.
And they really spelt it out like 3 or 4 different times in the show. So
keep your zombie lover alive. Sure.
Yeah. So while I like the themes, and there are multiple, that's just one of them. I think that's the one that they shoved the hardest, and it was the most obvious, right? That she starts out as a prim and proper all-American girl to some extent, and then turns into I'll throw acid in the alien's face because I think they're bad people, but I'm not really,
Okie dokie.
Yeah, really. Yeah, compared to some of the other messages that they had here, like watch out for corporate monopolies and corporate greed and vault tech.
Yep.
And I really like what they did with bringing up different Hollywood actors that were kind of finding out the truth about vault tech,
right,
and starting to speak up against it, but them being labeled as pink pinkos or commies,
Yep.
just like McCarthyism in our 50s. It
That's
was
very
just
cool.
another great way to look at what we do or used to do, hopefully, in American politics. Is like, oh, wait, someone doesn't agree with you? Well, then they are the other. Yeah, sorry. Well, I took a little turn on the static.
No, that's perfect.
But I didn't know if you had anything.
But now
anything
I
else?
think it explains to me, like I had the ghouls thing again, where him coming up.
Yeah,
out of
that was in
out of
my
the grave there.
static. That it was like,
But when you're talking about how they built up the vault tech with using Cooper, hit the ghoul's live self 200 years earlier, I think if they would have jumped into the ghoul version of Cooper, we would have lost. We kind of would have lost in translation the building up of the vault tech and all that stuff. So now I can see with us talking about it, and laying it out, I can see, oh, now it kind of makes sense why they didn't go into his ghoul backstory too much, because they wanted to focus on him being like, because he spies.
yeah,
on
if you know
on the
exactly how he
corporation.
became a ghoul, we wouldn't be nearly as interested in the backstory, right? They're kind of
You got
leading
it.
us along.
So now,
'cause
so
that's
cool.
That is the big question,
Yeah, dude, that's just talking it out. Like, oh, that makes sense. Now.
Yeah, they're not revealing everything just yet.
But
Giving
yeah,
us a little.
But for me, and I think it goes to where you give your emotional low note on this stuff. I think for me, the emotional static for me was like when all the big corps were in the room and they were talking about how they were gonna make the vaults the thing. Like they were planning out how they were gonna end the world, pretty much.
Yeah,
And that's like, oh my god, I can't believe like
to actually think that anyone would promote complete nuclear destruction of the surface so that they could have a monopoly on leadership is a little far-fetched, but it makes for a great story afterwards. So I'm kind of okay with it. I guess a couple of just notes in general about Fallout and what this means, because this is, I think everyone we've talked to, ourselves included, this is must watch TV. Like if you're into sci-fi, if you're into the video game whatsoever, definitely watch this. Right?
absolutely.
If you like a good post-apocalyptic adventure, like watch it. It gets a little gory, so that could be a turnoff for some people. There's a little bit of nudity, but it's really not super gratuitous.
No.
There's some really funny scenes. But it's thought-provoking, right? It makes you think about like, oh, what happens when you prophetize the end of the world? What are you gonna get?
Good word.
I guess one of my last little pieces of static was early on, and there's a scene where Lucy's stumbling through the wasteland and comes across like a dilapidated house, and it's like half filled with sand from the dunes pushing in. I'm like, oh, that's really cool. That's kind of what it would look like, hundreds of years in the future as nature recollects.
Yeah.
But then she stumbles onto like the kitchen, and the skeletons are like all still sitting in their chairs, and like the newspaper is like still in their hand. I'm exaggerating a little bit here, but the bottle of poison is still there within like 200 plus years later. Like I don't think so. Just don't think it's gonna.
I wonder how
hold
they
up
died.
like that. No, and I get it, because there are these beautiful scenes, or these really great scenes in the video game series where you stumble onto something like that and it really paints a picture, and it makes you feel like you're just kicking around the remnants of civilization. But that one just fell, just took me out of it. It just looks so, it's like, that's a Hollywood set. That's not.
That's a good one.
But then I guess if we've hit the high notes, the low notes, and the static, all we've got left to say is that if you find yourself crawling across the wasteland, falling in love with a knight in power armor, while trying to figure out if the ghoul's your friend or your foe, just remember that it's not the destination.
It's totally the journey. See you later. Okie dokie.
And if you like what you heard, Spread the word.